time now for Movie Spotlight, our weekly look at some of the latest cinematic releases at the Korean box office and online. And we, of course, do that with our panel of trusted critics. First, we have Jason Bechervaise back with us again. Hello, Jason. It's good to see you.
Hi, Django. How's it going?
It's going good. I hope you're doing well as well.
Yep.
And we have Marc Raymond with us this week. Marc, hello. It's good to see you too.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Okay, gentlemen, this week there are not many new releases, presumably because Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is out next week. Stop rolling your eyes, Jace.
I know, we were discussing this earlier and how it leaves a shortage of releases
exactly
in its wake.
A lot of studios don't want to try and release their big films next to a Marvel behemoth. So we've got one local independent film this week and a re-release to talk about. Let's start with the local indie release first. It's called Next Sohee, or 다음 Sohee in Korean, and it's finally getting a release after debuting at the Cannes Film Festival back in May last year. So, Marc, let me start with you. Can you tell us more about this film?
Yeah, this is the second film from July Jung. This film did play at Cannes at the International Critics Week, and it also played in Busan, which is where Jason and I first saw the film in October, but it's finally getting kind of a wide release now. Her debut film was in 2014, a film called, the English title was A Girl at My Door. The Korean title was Do-Hee-Ya, and it was highly acclaimed. It also starred Bae Do-na, who is also the co-star here, as actually playing a role very similar to the one she played in Broker, which came out last year, detective. The story follows a high school student played by Kim Shi-eun, and basically it's about the kind of corrupt labor practices she encounters through an externship program at this kind of shady call center. And the plot basically involves around her attempts to kind of deal with this situation, and as well as the kind of the investigation kind of involved into this corruption. I don't want to give too much away in terms of the plot because there are some kind of twists and turns in terms of the structure and the narrative. But it's very much in the kind of a tradition of what we might call kind of like a social problem film, essentially, right? Uses sort of a dramatic form to try to kind of illuminate problems in a society. And which was also kind of characteristic of her first film, but I think even stronger kind of here.
Okay, so Jason, this is a film that's trying to tackle some important subject matters. These types of movies can sometimes be very powerful, but at the same time, some can also end up being rather heavy-handed in their messaging, shall we say. Where does Next Sohee fall? What do you think of it?
I absolutely love the film. As Marc said, I saw it in Busan, and it was my favorite film that I saw in Busan. I think it's going to be one of the best Korean films of 2023. Looking at when looking at the releases of this year.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a powerful film. It's dealing with some pretty heavy stuff. Death and suicide and the issues facing young people, and particularly in the kind of working environment, very intense, and certainly for female workers a very, very challenging environment given the patriarchy and so on and so forth. I think it's really well structured. I'm trying not to give too much away, but you kind of see it from different perspectives. And it's just so wonderfully performed, so well written, and it hit me pretty hard. It's not to say that it's, I guess it is a gloomy film, but at the same time, it's not a film that I would say is heavy-handed at all. It does leave an impression, a very lasting impression. And it's a film I would like to revisit. July Jung, she's clearly a very talented filmmaker. A Girl at My Door was actually produced by Lee Chang-dong. So, that was an extraordinary film as well. But with Lee Chang-dong involved, you're never really quite sure how much of an impact he had on, the script and the direction. Whereas he was not involved in this film, certainly in the same way. So I think, this really did, for me, confirm her talent behind the camera, and also in terms of writing scripts as well. Lots to like about this film, and I would highly recommend it.
Mark, Jason called it one of the best films of 2023. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if this isn't one of the best Korean films of the year. It would be a really good year in Korean movies if it isn't, or for there be a number of films better than this one. And yeah, like I kind of agree with what Jason is saying. It's a powerful film. I don't think and it is certainly dark, but it's not a film that it's also a film I found very riveting to watch.
Sure.
Right? Like it is not a boring kind of slog of a film at all. It's like it does kind of, connect you to these characters very strongly and to the story, and really wants to it reminded me a lot of the best kind of, European kind of art cinema in this way of these kind of social realist dramas, but yet are, very strong on characterization, very strong on story, and in the purpose of is to kind of engage you so that you can, feel something about these situations, and hopefully maybe bring about some kind of change, or at least some kind of catharsis for these for the viewer. So I hope it does catch on with younger viewers in Korea. I think it could. I mean, it's really hard with the situation now. I think if it was 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, I would have said this has a really good chance of being this kind of, one of the better grossing indie movies of the year.
Right.
I don't know anymore, but since the situation's so unstable. But I think it could get an audience if it gets kind of the word of mouth it kind of needs. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mark touched on this in that, the film is really gripping. So it's kind of like a part procedural. It's not really, it's not a thriller, but it has certain elements of it that feel like that. And I think that really makes it somewhat more accessible, because when it comes to kind of social dramas in Korea, in the independent sector, some of them are really grueling, and they're difficult to watch, and they're dark. The pacing can be quite, it demands a lot of patience, is what I'm saying, on part of the viewer. Whereas this film, it is part kind of, very much, a film dealing with difficult issues. It's a drama, but there are also aspects to it that are, generally gripping. Right. And I think that, in a sense, could make it more accessible. I wonder whether it might put off some viewers, but certainly for me, I think that worked in its favour.
Okay, so that was Next Sohee. 2 thumbs up. Emphatic thumbs up, I would say, from both our critics. And it's out now in Korean cinemas. Our next film is perhaps somewhat of an unexpected one. It's a re-release of a Hollywood smash hit. James Cameron's Titanic is back in cinemas here in Korea. I'm not sure this film needs much of an introduction, but Jason, can you set this one up for us?
Yeah, I never thought I'd be talking about Titanic on the show, but here we are. This comes a few weeks after Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water. This was a film that sold over 10 million tickets in Korea. It's, in terms of box office revenue, generated over $2 billion. Critics and journalists seem to have a habit of underestimating James Cameron. A lot of doubters out there when Avatar came out. There's a lot of doubters out there when Titanic came out, actually. And yet, he always proves his critics wrong. This movie back in '97, a very expensive, audacious film. Few understood, when the film was released on its opening weekend, of the significance of it. The reports of production issues. Of course, the film is about, this fateful voyage of Titanic in 1912. It became the most successful film ever, selling over generating $2 billion at the box office, and 11 Oscars as well. And Cameron is someone who I think understood the potential of this film. The story, of course, it's famous. It doesn't really need an introduction, does it really? I mean, Kate Winslet stars in alongside Leonardo DiCaprio, and they play this, this couple from different social classes. They get on, they embark on this voyage, and they fall in love, and the ship, we all know the ship sinks, and Cameron, of course, loves the water. We see that in Avatar, the Abyss, and here as well.
It's has become basically a Hollywood classic now, right, Mark? So, am I right in thinking that you hadn't actually seen this film before this week?
I haven't. No, of course I know of it, and I've seen many scenes of the film on
Sure.
TV or in clips or whatever, but I never actually sat down and watched the entire 3-hour, 15-minute extravaganza before yesterday.
That is pretty remarkable.
And I went to see it in 3D, which it got kind of... Cameron remastered it for 3D, I believe, about 10 years ago. And
well, it was 2012, marking 100 years since the sinking.
Yeah.
Okay, so you came to this film completely fresh.
Mm-hmm.
How was it? What do you think of it?
Yeah, it's kind of like two movies, isn't it? It's the love story, which is about the first 90 minutes, and then it's the sinking of the disaster movie, which is the last 90 minutes, and it's almost like directly in half the structure. And of course, some aspects bleed over into both ones. But yeah, it's, the script isn't very good, but that's not why you're going to see this movie. He does spectacle very well and always has action and spectacle. And he really, I think, is helped out by DiCaprio and Winslet, who were very young at this time and not really, DiCaprio had become something of a star with Romeo and Juliet before this, but they were not the stars they would become. And their charisma really goes a long way to kind of carrying the kind of, especially the first half of the film. And so that stuff works better than it probably should. And then when we get to the disaster stuff, it's quite compelling. I did find, unusually for Cameron, like maybe a little bit, the pacing does lag a bit in the very last. I think he probably could have tightened that section could have been tightened a bit. But yeah, it's a pretty good entertainment. I can see why, obviously why it was so successful. And the 3D was not really necessary, but it wasn't too distracting. I found because Cameron is quite, good at 3D. As 3D,
Right.
3D isn't my favorite format generally. But it wasn't, there was some scenes where I thought the 3D, added some stuff. Others where I could have done without it. But yeah, overall, I didn't have a bad time at the movies. It's very much what a James Cameron Avatar style spectacle kind of is, but with this real life historical event. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm glad after all this time you did have a good time in the end. Jason, you have seen it before. We watched it again for us this week.
Yeah.
What was it like for you revisiting it?
Yeah, what I do for my job. Certainly Marc's mentioned this as the spectacle. Cameron is in a league of his own when it comes to being able to kind of put together these, very difficult set pieces. And, today when we watch a Marvel film, or not just a Marvel film, a lot of kind of Hollywood blockbuster fare, it's just everything is like green screen and it just doesn't look authentic. It just looks like you're in a video game. Whereas here, actually, for most of it looks... I mean, it's not CGI. There's obviously a lot of CGI on the credits, but actually, it's on a boat that they made, and it looks real. The spectacle is actually, even by today's standards, pretty incredible. Certainly towards the kind of latter end of the film, where it is more reliant on CGI, where it's not so good. And yeah, Marc said, in terms of the script, it's not great, but Cameron is someone who understands what his audience wants. He's not out there to please the critics, and so it's a love story from two different social classes. You have that kind of conflict going on, and he's able to kind of pull you in with these characters that are really well acted, by Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and yeah, it's got all the ingredients for a great blockbuster. It's not the best film out there, but going back to it, actually, I kind of enjoyed it, and I realized actually the film is literally 3 hours long because the credits go up on the 3 hour mark.
Right.
It literally is 90 minutes and 90 minutes, the build up and then the actual sinking itself. So it's a film actually I quite enjoy going back to, and I literally watched it in 2 parts.
I actually think when I first saw it in the cinemas initially, I think there was an intermission back then for my screening back in London.
Oh, really? Well, there was, when I watched in the cinema, there was no intermission, but
sure.
Due to my son, who I needed to
tells me
drive
something
him
about
around.
my age, though. I think that says something about how long ago it was. Okay,
but you can watch it in 2 parts.
Sure.
For sure.
And I do know people back when it came out who went to see it only after the first 90 minutes. They literally just want to see the spectacle of the ending and just kind of came late, an hour and a half in. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it's interesting that it's getting a re-release here anyway. Actually, briefly, let's just ask the final question. What's it say about the film industry in Korea at the moment that it is being re-released here at the moment?
Well, actually, in Korea, there's been loads of re-releases, actually. Love Actually is released like every other year. It's a perennial kind of Christmas classic. I think it holds the record in Korea, 6 re-releases. And then you've got, the Nolan films, Christopher Nolan, whose films, need to be seen on the big screen. Dark Knight was re-released 3 times. Now, with Titanic, obviously it comes after, Avatar, The Way of Water, and I think people want to go and see it on the big screen. But I think it does say something in that we're talking about it here because there are no other films to talk about. So it is a bit concerning that there aren't as many releases certainly as I would like. But that's partly because of, a certain Marvel film that's released next week.
I have a feeling they just wanted to keep using their 3D glasses that they brought out for Avatar 2 as well.
Well, yeah, there's that, but also it just doesn't cost any money.
Sure.
Right? So they don't really have to market the film. And in terms of, it's a 20th Century Fox or Disney film, so it's easy to make money. Yeah.
Okay, we'll call it a day there. Jason, Mark, thank you for your thoughtful reviews as always. Have a great weekend and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.